I'd like to welcome our audience to our panel discussion on an increasingly relevant topic facing organizations of all sizes, building and retaining a diverse talent pipeline. My name is John Gavigan, the Managing Director of Endeavor's Western New York office, headquartered in the Seneca One Tower in beautiful downtown Buffalo. We support 4 Endeavor companies from Rochester and Buffalo, along with dozens of candidates going through our selection process. It's my privilege to welcome 2 incredible people today, both experts on the topic of talent and diversity. Rene Jones is the chairman and CEO of M&T Bank. He was elected to this position in December 2017. Founded in 1856, M&T is one of the top 20 full-service U.S. commercial banks with 18,000 employees and a long history of community-focused banking. Renee received a Bachelor of Science degree from Boston College's Carroll School of Management and an MBA from the University of Rochester's Simon School of Business. He serves on various boards, including Boston College, the Jacobs Institute, ACB Auctions, the Federal Reserve Bank, New York's Federal Advisory Council, and the Massachusetts Historical Society's Council of Overseers. As one of only 4 Black CEOs in the Fortune 500, Renee's perspective on building talent has been nurtured over a lifetime of remarkable experiences and refreshing humility. In his words, we are proud of but not content with the progress we've made. Welcome, Renee.
Thanks, John.
Lisa,
glad to be here.
Lisa Sterling is the Chief Administrative and Human Resources Officer of EverCommerce, responsible for supporting the company's continued growth through talent recruiting, human capital management, professional development, and culture development programs. Before EverCommerce, Lisa served as Chief People and Culture Officer at Ceridian, supporting the company's global growth from $250 million to over $800 million in revenue, and leading the organization's cultural transformation to become a great place to work. Lisa also played a critical role in the organization's internal and external communication initiatives through their entrance into the public market. She is a University of Nebraska Cornhusker, a Forbes contributor, and a board member of ThinkX and the Santa Foundation. She is a cultural crusader, a value creator, people advocate, angel investor, speaker, and coach, and we are truly fortunate to learn from her today. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy that we have the opportunity to talk to entrepreneurs across the North Atlantic. And Renee, why don't we start with you? At M&T, you lead a 165-year-old organization of 18,000 people. You've often cited that your talent initiatives are your #1 priority. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your talent philosophy?
Sure, John. Thanks. I think, I guess the place to start is really 2 sort of experiences I've had in life that have sort of led me down this path of like being an extreme believer in the power of talent. The first is my own, which is, sort of as I was growing up, I grew up in a family that had not a lot of exposure to business and to sort of the things that I actually have exposure to today. In some way, shape, or form, at every step of the way, somebody lifted me up. So somebody took me with a very limited ability. They took me into Boston College and they brought me through mentorship programs. Somebody from there lifted me up and decided that maybe they could teach me something about what goes on at the Gillette Company. Somebody at the Gillette Company decided to send me off to a program at the Harvard Business School where I learned what an MBA was. And so on and so on. In fact, when I finally got to out of graduate school, my mentor, Bob Wilmers, who ran the company that I run now, who ran it for 35 years, essentially did the same thing and took somebody with basically raw skills and a limited set of experiences and believed in me. And so that's affected me. I've kind of watched lots of talented individuals who might not believe that they have the ability to do things be transformed And that's really powerful, because if you get within your organizations that I believe are really about purpose and mission, that purpose, mission, culture is everything. And if talent is really willing to engage in that purpose and mission and to work on your behalf, then it really is sort of an endless set of possibilities. And then I happened to come into M&T at some point where really the key driver of all the success that we've had over 4 decades has been on talent programs. Since 1985, we've hired, back in the day, we probably hired 50 undergrads and maybe 10 to 20 MBAs. They were all around general management discipline. And the rule was that we didn't care if you knew anything about banking. We wanted you to be relatively well-rounded, and we could teach you banking, but the job was to sort of hit the ground running and build something from scratch. So very entrepreneurial. And if you think about that, it involves not only sort of hiring great talent, identifying them, mentoring them, but it involved actually letting them run and finding out that there's more good that happens from that than negative. So today, since I've run the company since December of 17, I've done much of the same work, but I've sort of modernized the capabilities and took a look out there to see what capabilities were out there that could actually were capabilities that our firm was missing, and that we could go outside and capture those capabilities and bring them back in the form of human capital. And that's sort of been my mission, and will probably be what I do for my whole time in this role.
Amazing. Heard words like belief and uplifting, and it certainly has put M&T on a unique path. Lisa, you've got a very unique and robust history in technology, human capital management systems. What type of tools and strategies and recommendations would you recommend to all the entrepreneurs watching this to attract really a more diverse candidate pool?
It's a great question, and I will first say I've had the privilege of working with some really amazing technological platforms that do a whole host of things around human capital management. What I will say is this: when it comes to building, retaining a diverse talent pipeline, or engaging people, or creating career opportunities, the technology is simply an enabler, right? And there's some wonderful tools out there that have and continue to enable organizations to do things with their talent. But the reality is that to truly build a diverse pipeline and to retain people, it really has to come from the inside of the organization, right? Your strategies have to be in line. You have to make sure that you have the right foundation. And really, to foster that workplace, you have to focus on both the attraction and the retention, right? Like, a lot of organizations get really focused on the emphasis around attraction, yet the aspect of diversity or an inclusion is really neglected. And so you really can't have diversity without inclusion, right? And I think that's where organizations miss a critical piece, is they don't do what's necessary to create and foster the strategies necessary to build that inclusive workplace that will retain those individuals. So I think first and foremost, there's lots of platforms out there that can help you report out on the diversity, to connect to different types of platforms, but it really does come from the internal focus first. You have to make sure that you have the right behaviors in place. You have to make sure you have the right leadership that is emulating the things that you aspire to be as an organization. And then when you have those things, the technology platforms, and to your point, there's a lot of them out there that are doing great things, can become an enabler of those different processes or experiences for you. But I always hesitate when people say, what technology should we use to solve X problem? Technology doesn't solve a problem. The problem has to be solved by looking inward and fixing whatever is not working within the organization. And then you can use that technology to enable it as you move forward.
I think that's how early in a company's life cycle do you really begin building out and executing that type of strategy? I think that what you were saying is really more core to a culture and to the organization. How early should companies get started on it?
I mean, from the beginning, right? Like, if you look at the most simple definition of culture, it's how we do things around here. And so people can't create culture, right? And I always laugh when people say to me, well, you're responsible for culture. No, I'm actually not. Everybody is responsible for culture in the organization. It's not an HR or people and culture focus. It's everybody's focus. And so I would say it starts at the beginning, right? Like the first couple of people that you bring into the organization, if you're just starting from scratch as a startup to your 100th, 200th, 1,000th hire, you need to make sure that that is a core component of your foundation and DNA, if that's truly what you're aspiring to be. Because the worst thing that you can do is go out and make the necessary checkbox hire of hiring a diversity and inclusion leader when that really isn't how you behave as an organization. Going out and hiring somebody who has a specialty in that will not fundamentally fix or change the culture in the organization. That individual might help you gain insight into what you need to do or stop doing, but it really is that onset of making sure that you are surrounding yourself by people and with people who have those same types of desires to really foster that diverse and inclusive workplace.
It's funny, one of our great mentors in the Endeavor Network once said, the founder is truly responsible for their first 150 hires. And I think, and I think you just added another layer to that. It sounds like you really come from a deep pool of experience. What are some of the mistakes you've made or that your company has made when creating and implementing these types of services?
Well, I would say fundamentally.
I need to put you on the spot, Lisa.
No. Hell, I'm always happy to talk about the things I've done wrong because I hope other people learn from them. Listen, like a lot of senior leaders and executives, I have fallen into that realm of thinking I know what is necessary to fix in the organization and how to make things better because from where I sit, I have the vantage point of the entire organization. I was dead wrong, right? Like my fundamental philosophy now in everything that I do around talent and people is go to the people closest to the action and ask them for their opinions on what needs to be done and what the company needs to do or stop doing. Because in many of those instances, it is those individuals closest to the action that know the answers to the complicated problems that we believe we're trying to solve, yet they're not given a platform or the voice to speak up. And so we need to stop talking about empowering our employees and give the power back to our employees to feel comfortable telling us what we need to know, because all of us sitting up in the executive seat or the C-suite think we have the answers. And as I found in my previous life, I didn't have all of them. And so it's important to leverage those people who know, right? Like, what better group of people to go ask than a diverse group of people, and not just from ethnicity or gender, but of experiences, of backgrounds, of education, of roles, of thought. I mean, there's lots of different people, especially in a place like Renee's organization. You've got 18,000 employees. At EverCommerce, we have 2,000, but all 2,000 of them have their own opinions and have ideas that we should be leveraging, and we do.
It's amazing insight, particularly for emerging leaders and people growing into these types of roles. So thanks for the response and being vulnerable to answer it. Renee, when you took over as chairman and CEO, I'm hopeful that you remember this conversation, but I asked you, what the heck do you do now? How do you assume a role responsible for that type of community? What do you do first? And I'll never forget your response because I've shared it so many times with emerging leaders that we've coached over time. And your response, do you remember what your response was to me?
You shoot.
You said to me, 90% of my time will be focused on my next 5 hires. Yeah. And I can't tell you how many times I've repeated that. And that was almost 4 years ago. So why don't you share your experiences during that time, some of the techniques for recruiting, building, retaining talent and high impact teams and why diversity of your teams are so important to your organization.
Yeah, so I guess to start up, I love what Lisa was talking about, and in particular this idea that when we think about diversity, we think about acquiring talent. But really it is, as you said, acquiring, retaining, including, making people have a feeling of belonging. And, my belief system is a really simple one around talent, which is that a company, whether it's got 2,000 or 18,000 employees, is just a nexus of relationships. And so every time in my community, if an employee leaves, there's a different version of M&T that exists. And if a person comes in, there's now a new version of M&T. And when you get large, it's harder to see. If you're a startup, you really see it. And so that's sort of like a really fundamental belief that I have. And then when you think about it, if you really believe in the philosophy that you're bringing in capabilities in the form of human capital, right? That you're bringing people in that are experts in a field that bring something to the table that you don't bring, or that somebody else in the organization doesn't bring. You can have an outsized impact and outsized leverage by focusing on each hire, right? If you're just going through the process and there's an open requisition and you're trying to fill it, that's great. But the first part of it really starts with sort of having a really strong and articulate, a strong belief system, mission and purpose, and then being able to articulate that in a way that attracts individuals. And if you can get that done, I believe you have the ability to attract, how do I say this, outsized talent for the organization that you have. There's two good friends of mine decided to merge their companies in the last 3 years. And one of the things they said in the announcement was that they're really excited because they are going to take the savings from bringing the two firms together, and they were going to spend $100 million in technology. And I was smiling from ear to ear. We're competitors, because I was thinking to myself, boy, if I had an extra $100 million, I would hire your 4 best people, right? Because it's not